Hello, friends. You've stumbled across a short clip from the Daily Switch 2 podcast, which, believe it or not, is a podcast that is about the Switch 2 with new episodes released daily. What will they think of next?
So the first one is BUBSY 4D. BUBSY 4D for both Switch 1 and 2. We don't know if there's going to be a physical version. We don't know a release date. BUBSY 4D, it made me giggle when I saw that announcement. I was like, oh my goodness, okay, we're doing this again, are we? Okay. Bubsy the Bobcat is something that I could talk about this for like at least half an hour, 45 minutes right now, going over my opinions of Bubsy and the Bubsy series and all of the Bubsy games. But I won't, because A, this is going to be a long video already, and B, I think it would make a good separate video. Maybe I'll do a history of Bubsy when I do a review of the game, or maybe I'll do a preview and we'll talk about it first. I don't know. But Bubsy is a really, really interesting subject. To briefly sum it up, people remember Bubsy now as this joke. It's become a meme. And like people, oh, Bubsy games are the worst games ever. Bubsy's the worst mascot character ever. If you were around at the time when Bubsy was launching, nobody felt like that. Literally nobody felt like that at the time when it was about to launch. The previews and everything, there was so much hype, and the character was being built up. It was being advertised to kids everywhere. They fully expected that there was going to be a TV series, and there was going to be comics, and there was going to be an animated series, and they were going to do merchandise with plushies and action figures. They really thought this was going to be huge, and they obviously spent a lot of money to hype it up in all the gaming magazines and gaming TV shows. And honestly, the character himself is pretty appealing. It's a really nicely drawn character in the original art. They got great designers in. There was that kind of Sonic style irreverent humor, but there was voice samples, so he actually made jokes and references and things, and everybody thought this is going to be really cool. And it was an obvious Sonic clone, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing at the time, because Sonic was the new hotness. Like, everybody was trying to make a Sonic clone, and people who loved Sonic games, myself included, were just, hyped to play more games that were like Sonic if they were good. And there are many mascots that came out at the time that had good games, and Bubsy looked like it was going to be one of those good games. And when the first Bubsy game came out, also it was on Mega Drive, Genesis, and Super Nintendo as well. So obviously having a Sonic competitor that was available on the Nintendo system was a big deal at the time as well, because a lot of Super Nintendo owners were like kind of jealous of the fact that the Mega Drive, Genesis people had Sonic, because at the time there was really nothing quite like it on the Super Nintendo. I mean, afterwards there was, obviously, because as I said, everybody tried to copy it. But yeah, the first game, people who owned a Super Nintendo were really, really looking forward to it and really wanted to convince themselves that it was as good, if not better, than Sonic. And people who owned a Mega Drive Genesis who loved Sonic just wanted more Sonic. So there was a lot of hype for the first Bubsy game. And when it came out, you know what? It's not bad. It's not bad. Yeah, it's not perfect. There's flaws. There's a little too many kind of times when you have unfair deaths. There's bottomless pits, or there's, it encourages you to move fast, but it also has enemy placements where you just constantly run into enemies. So it is extremely frustrating when you first start playing it, but it's one of those games that there's a lot to like about it. The presentation is good, the design of the character is good, the music is good, the graphics are good, the physics and everything work well. So it's one of those games, yes, you will die all the time and there's unfair deaths, but if you persevere with it, which back in the day, games were expensive, and you didn't get a chance to own very many games unless your parents were like super rich. So if you had a game, even if it wasn't perfect, you kind of forced yourself to like it. So there was a lot of kids who really wanted Bubsy, and then they bought Bubsy, and yeah, okay, it was a bit frustrating, but there's things to like about it, so you stick with it. And it's one of those games that when you learn it, when you know where the enemies are going to be, when you know the level layout, it's actually a really good game. There's a lot to like about it. It's really well designed. It's really nice. Yes, as I said, it's not perfect. It's not flawless. Absolutely not. There's plenty of stuff wrong with it, but it's not a terrible game. In fact, it's one of the better Sonic clones. There was many, many much worse Sonic clones. So for this to be remembered as one of the worst games of all time is simply rewriting history. Now, the character himself, yeah, he can get a little bit annoying because, yes, he did tell all those jokes and had voice samples and things like this. But, this was back in the day of, the 16-bit systems with very limited cartridge space. So he ended up repeating the same lines of dialogue over and over again, which did become very frustrating very quickly. A joke is funny the first time you hear it, but you don't want to hear that same joke over and over again. So, but then that kind of became part of his endearing character. After a while, he's this kind of wisecracking, kind of corny character. But yeah, Bubsy 1, not a bad game. The problem is, it went downhill from there. Bubsy 2, everybody was pretty hyped for Bubsy 2 still. Because they thought, well, the first game was good. Yes, there was flaws, but they're going to learn from their mistakes, and they're going to build on what was good, and Bubsy 2 is going to be even better. No, it wasn't. It was worse. It was actively worse. There was an exclusive Bubsy 2D platformer on the Atari Jaguar, which at the time we were being told was a 64-bit next-gen system and was being hyped out the wazoo of, oh, this is next-gen gaming. And in the screenshots, the exclusive Bubsy game looked really cool. The graphics looked amazing with all the extra colors and kind of hand-drawn, hand-painted stuff rather than tile-based backgrounds. But no, it's even worse. It's even worse. It's an absolutely terrible platform game, unfortunately. So really, the game's got worse and worse and worse from Bubsy 1 onwards. So it started in quite a good state, and it just got worse and worse. And then you had Bubsy 3D. Now, Bubsy 3D, that is the game that made everybody say, oh, Bubsy is the worst mascot of all time. Bubsy, no, you're right, okay, because Bubsy 3D is just notoriously bad. It's one of those games alongside kind of, E.T. for the 2600 or Superman 64. It's one of those games that if you say, what are the worst games of all time, people will always mention Bubsy 3D. And a near infinite amount of YouTubers have made comedy in inverted commas videos talking about how terrible it is. And when I say that, I'm not shitting on people like AVGN or whatever. No, I mean people who think they're funny but aren't. I like some angry comedy gamers, but it just became a thing that everybody tried to copy AVGN. And if you're going to do that, and if you're going to try and find a game to be angry about, Bubsy 3D is one of the games that everybody will make a video about. Oh, I'm going to play this game. Oh, I hope it's good. Oh, it's not. And here's the thing, like Bubsy 3D, is it a good game? No, absolutely not. But I kind of feel sorry for the developers of it because they've talked about this and they're like, okay, this was before 3D platformers existed. This was one of the very, very, very first 3D platform games ever made. It came out on the PlayStation 1. It was one of the earliest games on the PlayStation 1. Long before something like Crash Bandicoot or Spyro the Dragon, even before Croc. This was like one of the very, very first 3D platform games on the PlayStation 1, and just one of the very first 3D platform games ever. And nobody really knew how to make a 3D platform game at the time. So there was a lot of experimentation. Like if you remember Jumping Flash, for example, that was a kind of attempt at a 3D platform game. It was really weird, but kind of cool. But obviously, it was Mario 64 that came out that made everybody go, yes, that's how you're supposed to do it. And then everything after Mario 64 copied Mario 64. But this started development before Mario 64. There wasn't analog controls either. That people forget. The original PlayStation, when it first launched in 1994, it didn't have an analog stick on the controller. It only had a D-pad. So, yeah, okay, Bubsy has tank controls rather than analog controls, but that's because there literally wasn't an analog stick on the controller at the time. Now, is it a good game? No, it's really clunky. It's really bad, especially when you compare it to later PS1 games. Once the developers has actually got a hang of it, and you compare the graphics to something like Spyro or Crash. I mean, it looks awful. It looks more like a Super Nintendo Super Effects game, funnily enough. There's a lot of flat shaded polygons and stuff. But I feel sorry for Bubsy 3D because it really was trying to invent something new, trying to push the genre forward, or trying to create a new genre. And if you read the interviews with the developers of they say, like, before their game came out, they were feeling quite good about it. They were quite proud of what they'd made. They thought, yeah, we're really pushing the boundaries here. This is a new frontier, and everybody's going to look at this and go, oh, wow, a platform game in 3D. What a great novelty. And then they saw a preview of Mario 64, and they realized that their game was not even 1% as good or as not good looking or as playable or as smooth or as well designed as Mario 64, and they knew that their game was going to come out around about the same time, and they just instantly knew, okay, people are going to laugh at our game is just going to look embarrassingly outdated. Even though we thought we were pushing the boundaries, we had no idea what was possible. And as a game dev myself, I completely understand that. In fact, one of the reasons why I got out of the gaming industry, I've been programming games since the 1980s. I was very lucky. My dad taught me to program when I was a young child. And back in the day, in the 80s, you could literally get games that would come out in the shop shelves that were literally programmed by one kid in their bedroom, you know? And many of those kids are now working for companies like Rockstar, etc. Yeah, I got out of the gaming industry in late 90s, early 2000s, because by that point, everything was the tech was evolving so quickly that it was impossible for me to keep up with what was expected and what was fashionable. There was new 3D game engines and new tech and new shaders and stuff. Literally every month there would be a brand new game coming out that would make last month's game look out of date. And for a solo developer like me, somebody who wanted full creative control to come up with a cool idea and spend, years crafting my passion project, it just wasn't possible to be in the games industry at that time. Because, of course, you've got to remember this was before Flash games, before mobile games. I mean, there was some kind of Java games, but they were terrible. But before before the iPhone and decent Android made decent mobile games possible, there was just no way to get an indie game out there that was a simple kind of solo passion project. And thankfully now there is. So now, because of the COVID lockdowns and me having more time on my hands when I couldn't work on movies, I've got back into games dev, which is great. And I'm so happy to have done so. But and this is why I'm so passionate about supporting indie devs, especially solo devs or small passionate teams making cool, weird indie projects or retro aesthetic things. I love that. So yeah, I was literally getting out of the games industry at around about this time, or a few years after, but soon after. And I completely understand, what the devs are saying. They thought that they were really technologically pushing the boundaries of what was possible on the PlayStation, and then just like, I don't know, 2-3 months later you got Croc, and then 2-3 months later you got Crash Bandicoot, and BUBSY 3D compared to those games looks awful, and compared to Super Mario 64, I mean, there's just no comparison, is there? So, yeah, BUBSY 3D, it's fun to point and laugh, but at the time, the devs really they didn't have something to copy, and they really were starting from nothing and trying to work out what to do. So it's a really interesting game. But yeah, if you want me to do a full deep dive history of the BUBSY games, because there have been other BUBSY games as well, not just the ones that I've mentioned, and really go into it, and yeah, I'd love to do that, like I did with my Shantae, like I did with my Shantae retrospective. But yeah, I saw, obviously, so BUBSY 3D. Now this new game is called BUBSY 4D. So I haven't watched the trailer yet. I imagine what they're going to do is they're going to lean into the meme side of it of, oh, wasn't BUBSY 3D such a terrible game? But now we're going to make a new 3D platformer, and maybe this one will be good. I imagine that's what they're going to do. As I said, I've not watched the trailer. I did see the thumbnail. I don't like the art of the thumbnail. To me, that doesn't look like BUBSY. It's not a badly drawn picture, but they've changed a lot of the proportions of his face and things. I know he's meant to be older now, but I don't know. It just looks a bit off to me. But I do think it's cool that there's a new BUBSY game. So let's watch the trailer. I hope it's good, and I'll let you know what I think.
BUBSY 3D live reaction.
Yo, remember me? Your old pal Bubsy?
Okay.
Oh, those classic games you loved.
Yeah, that's what I thought they were going to do. I don't. Oh, I don't like his design. Maybe I can get used to it. Okay. Oh, that's interesting the way they've turned the exclamation mark into a tie.
This I like.
Oh, those are the demon. God, what was it called? I don't hate this. Coyote time. Nice. Okay, that's a cool feature. Yeah, these levels look kind of similar to the BUBSY 3D levels, but good. Oh, there's some Sonic Lost World going on there. Interesting. I'm one of the few people that actually like that game. Oh, that's cool. That's cool that you can actually have the PS1 character design. Is it wrong that I much prefer the PS1 character design than the modern one?
You know I've only got one brain cell, right? And it's working overtime on this baby.
What?
Atari? I didn't even know they were still around.
Right. Okay. I have thoughts. Okay. Right. So, first, I could go off on a massive tangent about this, but I won't. Atari, I didn't know they were still around. They're not. They're not. I'm sorry. Any game that has an Atari logo at the beginning has zero to do with Nolan Bushnell, has zero to do with the Atari 2600, has zero to do with the Atari Lynx or Jaguar. They aren't. That name, that brand name, that it's just a logo at this point, has been sold and repackaged and passed through so many hands over the years. There's been so many stupid products with the Atari logo on it. It's been completely desecrated. However, the current owners of Atari, the Atari trademark, do have been putting it on some decent games and have been putting out some decent products, and some of the more recent products have been really quite good. Atari 50 was a fantastic collection, and some of the recent hardware releases have been okay, and some truly great games with the Atari logo attached. So I'm not shitting on the current iteration of the company, but it's not Atari. It's not. It's not. It's making me think of Perifractic Retro Recipes guy, who I've sort of had interaction with a few times because we both work on Star Wars projects and stuff, and him and his wife Orly, they're perfectly nice people. He's recently bought Commodore, so it's like, okay, we are now Commodore, and it's like, are you really Commodore? But it's a lot. To be fair to them, it's a lot more Commodore than the current Atari is Atari, because at least they've gone out of their way to contact as many people from the original Commodore days and the original Amiga days, and at least have them on board as consultants, do a few Zoom calls and things, to at least kind of make sure that they're okay with what's happening. So it's not really Commodore, is it? But it's more Commodore than Atari is Atari, if you know what I mean. Again, I'm not, like I say, no shade to Perry and Perifractic and Lady Fractic, or no shade to them at all. I'm sure they're great. I'm sure they're great people, and they do great work on the Star Wars projects. And so we don't know each other, but we're in the same orbit. That was just one of many. I know it's a joke. I'm taking it too seriously. That was one of many jokes. I did hear quite a few little jokes and quips and things in there. I didn't react to many of them. None of them made me laugh, but I purposely didn't react to any of them because I didn't want to be too snarky. Kind of the whole point, I'm guessing, from the way that they're pitching it, is he makes cringy dad jokes. I don't think
it's meant to be hilarious comedy writing. I think they're leaning into the fact that in the original games, and especially in BUBSY 3D, because with BUBSY 3D, it was like, oh, we've got PlayStation now. We don't have the limitations of a cartridge. We've got a CD, so we can have BUBSY can talk as much as we want. And in that game, he just never shut up. And again, even though you have more storage space, when you're playing a game, it's going to be repeating the same clips over and over again. And it was just like, why don't you shut up? So BUBSY became infamous not for being a funny comedian like he was intended to be, but he became infamous for making the same repeated cringy jokes over and over again. So I understand that the trailer is going to have a lot of kind of cringy dad jokes because they're going to be leaning into that. But what didn't quite sit right with me was like how he was constantly insulting himself. Like he made like a joke about him having no brain cells and things like that. I don't like that. I'm fond of BUBSY, and a lot of people are fond of BUBSY, and that's why he can keep coming back. This isn't the first modern BUBSY game. There has been attempts before. And there is still an audience for BUBSY, and I don't think it's just the meme audience of, oh, this game's going to be terrible, let's laugh at it. No, I think there's a lot of people who actually are fond of BUBSY and want to see the character in a good game. So to have him like insulting himself is, I don't know, that doesn't quite sit right with me. It's not self-deprecating. It feels a bit mean-spirited. I don't know. Maybe I'll rewatch. I've only watched the trailer once. Maybe if I rewatched it again, I would feel differently. But that's just my first reactions. Now, as I said, the designs of the levels, or the designs of some of the levels, do actually look very similar to what they were going for in BUBSY 3D. But obviously with much better tech. So nowadays they can have a better draw distance, a higher poly count, a smoother frame rate. They can design things better. They can put more textures on. But I did think it was kind of cool how they've obviously at least taken some inspiration from BUBSY 3D and gone, okay, what were the devs trying to achieve? Let's be fair to them. What were they trying to achieve? Can we recreate that, but with the benefits of modern technology and make it better? And as I said, there was also elements in there of, I saw kind of Sonic Lost World style tube levels, and I don't know, the platforming looked good. It's developed by Fabraz, who did, I was trying to remember the name of it, but it has come to me now. They did Demon Turf, didn't they? And Demon Turf was a very, very solid 3D platformer from a few years back. On the Switch. It was interesting because the main character was 2D, like drawn 2D and animated 2D, but moving in 3D. But it was cool. So yeah, there's some good heritage there. I thought it kind of made sense, but it's also kind of sad that it looked like BUBSY has some kind of like PTSD from being in BUBSY 3D. Like he's looking back on it and being like, oh god, that was like one of the worst times of my life. And fair to be honest, we all do. Anybody who's tried to play that game, even if you try to be fair to it, even if you try and give it a chance, it is an exercise in frustration. I know I was being quite kind to it when I was talking about it, but it's just because I said nice things about the developers doesn't mean that what they made was a good game. No, it's a terrible game. An interesting game, a historically interesting game, and to be fair to them, it was pushing boundaries for the time, but just it's one of those things best left in the past, in his new design, the exclamation point that was on his t-shirt has now become a tie, and he's wearing like a kind of white jacket, kind of looking a bit kind of 80s Miami Vice. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It looks a bit like guy in his mid-30s to 40s having a midlife crisis, which is kind of what I felt like earlier when I was having a complete breakdown and nearly crying about Sonic and Pac-Man being together. But yeah, I liked the coyote time. That's really cool. And I liked a lot of the options that I saw, a lot of the personalization stuff, a lot of the character customization. It's really, really neat that they've got the PlayStation style BUBSY 3D model. You can play as him if you want to, and that's really cool because it's kind of like writing history, isn't it? It's kind of writing a wrong of history. It's going, okay, let's take that character and let's put him in a actually good game. Because to be fair, this does look like an actually good game, but I still winced a little bit. I said I didn't like the I didn't like the box art that was on the thumbnail, but I also really don't like that that 3D animated Bubsy that they're using, and therefore the player model is just, they've redesigned him, but they've taken so much away from what made the design unique and cool in the first place. As I said, the design of that character was crucial as to why so many kids were hyped for that game before it came out, because it was a really cool character. I remember I taught myself how to draw him, and I would draw him and Sonic and Mario and Zool, all being friends together, because it was a cool design. And they've just... Ew. They've made his eyes smaller, they've made the orange part of his head wider, and they've made his tufts smaller, so he now looks like a kind of weird off-brand Garfield or Heathcliff, but just not. And I really don't like it. I just don't. It's not going to stop me from playing the game, because obviously when you're playing a 3D platform game, it's, you're behind the character anyway. It's not going to be looking right at him. And I don't know. You could argue, oh, well, he's much older now. He's meant to be an adult, and that's why his proportions of his face have changed, and that's why his hairstyle has changed. And it just doesn't look like Bubsy to me. Bubsy was a cool, fairly unique for the time design, or at least fairly distinctive design. Some of you will know that I've done animation training, and I worked with Don Bluth for 2 years, and Richard Williams, and many other people from Disney and things at the time. And one of the things that they all would emphasize over and over and over again about cartoon character design is good cartoon character design. If you had just a silhouette, just a black shadow, just a silhouette, just an outline of a character, A, could you tell which character it was? And B, from the pose, could you tell what kind of mood that character's in or what they're doing, right? So good character design is a combination of having enough unique elements of that design that they would be quickly readable if you saw an outline of them, and then appeal with that character is to put them in a pose that doesn't just feel like a stock T-pose, that actually feels dynamic and feels like they're standing in a way that is unique to that character, right? And that's exactly the opposite of what we got here. What we got here was a character that if you drew an outline of it, it would be literally any anthropomorphic character with cat ears. Literally any. There's nothing unique about it. And he was just stood there in the most boring default pose. Could even be, motion tracked and not even properly animated. They just stood him in a stock pose and then put motion trackers on you can do facial motion tracking with an iPhone nowadays, and you can do body motion tracking with a bloody webcam. It's so simple nowadays to animate something if you don't care about the appeal of the animation, and there was nothing appealing about his animation. The script was okay. As I said, there's elements about the script that I didn't like. The voice acting was fine. His voice is fine. I don't know whether it's the original voice actor or not. I don't know enough about it. I could look it up. But it sounded okay. It sounded like Bubsy. Yeah, sure. But they butchered the character design, and there was nothing appealing about how they animated him for those cutscenes. I don't know what the budget was. Maybe the budget is really low, and I've said this before, like especially when I was talking about Shadow Labyrinth, I really went into this. I hate criticizing the work of other artists, because whenever I do, I know that somebody will have worked really, really hard on it. But it's just not good. I'm sorry. This isn't good. This is objectively not good. This is everything that when you're in any kind of design school for animation or character design, this is the opposite of what they teach you to do. Now, sometimes, you break the rules to invent something new, yes, but that's absolutely not what they've done here. This is as bland and generic as it possibly could have been. The gameplay, however, looks good. Gameplay looks good, and I'm glad that this exists. It's out on Switch 1 and Switch 2 and obviously other consoles as well. It's not a Nintendo exclusive, unfortunately. We don't have a release date for it yet, but I will be looking out for it. We don't have any information on a physical release. If there is a physical release, especially if it's a Switch 2 physical release, I will buy this without question. I'm a big 3D platformer guy. This looks like the platforming itself is going to be fun. Just for the sake of, I have fondness for the character, I own copies of every single BUBSY game that's ever come out. I will buy this one as well, as long as there's a physical version. If it's digital download only, it's going to be a bit of a hard sell for me, and it will depend what the price is. But I really hope that there's a physical version. Obviously, I hope that there's a physical version for the Switch 2 with the game actually on the cartridge, and it isn't like a code in a box or a game key card, but that remains to be seen. But either way, I'm glad there's a Switch 2 version. If there's a physical version, I will be buying it. And in the meantime, if you want me to do a proper deep dive history of BUBSY, like I just did with my deep dive 2-hour-long history of Shantae, if you haven't watched that, I highly recommend going to check it out, because the Shantae series, every game in that series is good, and also the history of the character and also what the games have meant for Nintendo history along the way is really interesting. And of course, yesterday or the day before, depending on when you listen to it, we've just got a brand new Shantae game that has been released right now. It's actually out immediately right now. So yeah, go check out my Shantae video if you haven't already. But yeah, if you want me to do a similar type deep dive but into the history of BUBSY, I actually think that there's some really interesting stuff to talk about. I'm not going to do a full tier list for this yet. I'll wait until Gamescom is finished and then do my full kind of, okay, let's rate them all in order. But yeah, if I was going to give a tier list, kind of just where would I place it, what tier would I place it in, but I'm not going to be ranking, but what tier would I place it in? I'm going to say this, being that it was an announcement, as far as I know, we didn't know this before, I'm going to say this is an A tier announcement. It's a character that I love. There's cool elements. It's from a developer that I trust. It's Switch 1 and 2. I can't give it an S tier because, frankly, that character model is awful. Until we know whether there's physical, I don't know whether I'm going to bother giving it the time of day of buying it. I probably will. If it's digital only and it's cheap, I probably will. Or if it's full price and it's physical, I probably will. But yeah, no, A tier. It's a 3D platform game. It's a series that I care about. We didn't know about it before, so it's an A tier announcement. Well, that was funny / sad / informative / stupid, wasn't it? Feel free to mentally redact to make that make sense with the clip that you just heard. I don't know what it was. I'm just recording a bumper. But if you enjoyed the clip, please give it a like. If you'd like to hear more, click subscribe, and you can find all the ways to listen to and support the full daily podcast at linktree/dailyswitch2. That's linktr.ee/dailyswitch2. Let's go! Did I sound like I mean that? I do. I really do.